This is Mongolian Mindset, and today we're going to be responding to our boy Victor Tramp. It was a pleasure to meet you and type you, but let's get into what you said. Can you do Leonardo DiCaprio? He's a tough one. Okay, so first let's look at our sworn enemy, personality database. They have Leonardo DiCaprio as a ESFP. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so you guys know we use Linda Barrens metrics. She uses temperament and interaction styles. We do that in combination with functions, and that's how we figure out we will figure out his type. Okay. Please catch up on the 8 function model. It's more than just 4, and we'll be going over the other 4 for the ESFP because personality database has them up there. And this is the best book that's out on MBTI. It's by Dario Nardi. He has brain scans to back up what he's doing. So if you don't know anything about Dario Nardi, or you're trying to take your MBTI knowledge to the next level, please pick it up. And 50% of our viewers are not subscribed. It'd be wonderful if you guys would subscribe and join our Facebook group and message Cody, our moderator Cody, if you want the free typing sessions. We're only going to be doing this for about another 2 weeks, and then we'll be probably focusing on other content instead of celebrity typers and whatnot. So that's in the future. But so they have him as ESFP. ESFPs have SE in the first spot, FI in the second spot, and the third spot, child function, or whatever you want to call it, tertiary, TE. In the inferior function, or the fourth one, they have NI. And the fifth, the opposing personality, get up on John Beebe's work. That'd be SI. In the sixth spot, the the critic, that would be FE. And in the seventh spot, the trickster, that would be TI. They have no internal logic. So, yeah. And in the eighth spot, the demonic or angelic function would be any extroverted intuition. So let's get into this.
And I am so thrilled to be here tonight for the SAG Foundation conversation with not just the biggest actor working today, but the best. And it's very rare that those two things collide. Since bursting onto the scene with 1993's This Boy's Life, this is an actor who has continued to make bold choices and deliver outstanding performances. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Congratulations. I was going to say on a great year, but really a great 20 years. But most recently on your 2 Oscar nominations for Wolf of Wall Street. Can you tell us how you heard the news?
I was falling in and out of sleep in my house, and I think I had the television on at, I don't know, it came on at 4 or 5 in the morning, and then it woke me up around 6. No one called me, actually, which...
Okay, so what I'm noticing right now is he's going through progression. Let's go back. He's going through progression. Leonardo's going through progression. Let's go back.
Recently on your 2 Oscar nominations for Wolf of Wall Street. Can you tell us how you heard the news?
I was falling in and out of sleep in my house, and I think I had the television on at, I don't know, it came on at 4 or 5 in the morning, and then it woke me up around 6. No one called me, actually, which is what happened before, and I saw my name up on the screen. It was pretty amazing. Pretty shocking. I didn't expect it, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I know people always say that, but it was a tough year for actors. There were some amazing performances.
Really, a great year for movies, really. I mean,
yes.
Truly, we're talking about, I suppose, a retrospective on my life, but I have seen...
Okay, so he just initiated there, okay? That's initiating. He just took right over.
Different...
Let's go back. Make sure you guys catch that.
It was pretty amazing. Pretty shocking. I didn't expect it, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I know people always say that, but it was a tough year for actors. There were some amazing performances.
Really, a great year for movies, really.
You see that? Came right on out.
Yes. Truly,
The reason why I'm taking him a little bit more serious is Victor said it was a tough time, so just take it a little bit easy, slower.
Oh, we're talking about, I
Be
suppose,
very
a
thorough on this
retrospective on my life, but I have seen, different ebbs and flows in the industry, and I got to say this year's pretty astounding. A lot of, outside financing has come in, and greenlit films that I don't think would normally be financed. And
okay, I'm also noticing that he's coming off informative. But if he's coming off informative, I'm gonna put an asterisk side of it. We only got 1 point for progression, 1 point for initiating right now. So progression plus initiating usually is the starter type, and they are informative, so that matches up.
Therefore, there have been a lot of outstanding performances as well. I'm really excited to be just in the conversation this year. It's been great.
I want to go back and start at the beginning because you are, I understand, one of those rare creatures I've heard about, a Los Angeles native.
Yes, yeah.
You were actually born and raised here.
I was born in Cedars-Sinai, which is now the Scientology Center, the old one on Sunset Boulevard.
So you just gave her extra information there. I was born here, now it's Scientology. That's extra information that goes on the realm of informative.
And I grew up on Hollywood and Western, which is kind of a well-documented area because it was Bukowski's safe haven where he would sort of roam around.
He keeps giving extra information. So I'm gonna go ahead and say he's informative, okay? And if he's informative, that eliminates 8 whole types from him. Yeah. So he could only be ESFJ, ESFP, which personality database has a mass, ENTP, ENFP, okay? Then you have the introverted informative types, ISFJ, ISFP, INTP, and INFP, okay?
Around and write. My father would also carry me around in a crib and run into Bukowski, but it was a kind of my parents both came from New York, and they had this postcard image of utopian Los Angeles and Hollywood, and then we kind of moved into the mecca of prostitution and drug addicts. So that's where I grew up, and then later on moved to Silver Lake and Los Feliz for a long period of time after that. But yeah, I'm from LA.
Look at him. He's on a tangent here. Like, come on.
Born and raised here, but as I've said many times before, I never felt like I was a part of the Hollywood system. Mm-hmm. I always felt like
I didn't feel like I was part of the Hollywood system. I'll put a point down for systematic there. She's talking about the system. Ooh, you know who complained about systems. We all know who complained about systems. And that's initiating because she changed the topic. She didn't ask him that.
Outsider. And I think that if it weren't for the fact that I had a mother that really took the time to listen to a kid that said, I want to do this for a living. This is what I know I want to do. This is my passion. A 10, 11-year-old kid. If it hadn't been for her taking me to auditions and the sheer proximity of going to a school that accepted me in Beverly Hills, and then being able to drive to the Valley or drive to Hollywood on the way back from school, I probably wouldn't be doing this for a living because if I lived in any other location, I don't think my dream would have been a possibility.
It might have happened. It might have just taken a little bit longer.
Well, I think, to tell you the truth, I think that, it's a combination of, being in the right place at the right time and being prepared for it and being aggressive about it and sticking with it. I don't know. I'd done a lot of television and commercials before then, but it was really this one role that launched my career, and that was this boy's life. That was the truth of the matter. I was at the right place at the right time and aggressively going out on auditions.
When did you know you wanted to be an actor? You started at such
He seems to be incredibly humble.
a young age. Did you think of it as a career, or were you having fun?
Like I said, I always felt like an outsider because I knew of people, that were in the industry. I just didn't know how to get into it. And I remember going to cast different agents when I was 9 or 10 years old. I was rejected twice. I remember there was like this sort of cattle call of kids, and I lined up. It was like a prison photo or something like that. And I'm standing there like this.
All right, so he's talking about his SI experience there. And what I'm also noticing is that he's coming off very first person oriented, which would be SI oriented. He's not like pretty much talking about other people or anything. He's coming from a first person perspective when he's talking. Be indicative of SI.
And I had this crazy breakdancing haircut from when I was breakdancing. and I kind of dressed in hip hop clothing, and I remember they went, yes, yes, went to me, went, nope, yes, yes, nope, yes,
Wow.
yes. And that was it. So I got rejected a couple times, and then I just kept asking and asking and asking. And I remember my dad saying, just stick with it.
So he's talking about the progression here again of how he made it. So I'm put a point down for progression again. Like I said, it's looking like he is in the starter types. Okay.
That someday you'll have your day, and then I came back, I think 2 years later, and finally got an agent, Harry Gold with Bonnie Likey. Bonnie Likey was my first agent.
And I know you started doing commercials and TV appearances like Santa Barbara and Parenthood, the first time around they did
Yeah.
Parenthood. Was it a lot of on-the-job training, or had you taken any classes?
Well, my favorite class was drama school, drama class in high school. I was,
My
was the only
favorite class was drama school. That'd be an FI statement, but
thing I did exceedingly well in. Everything else I was pretty mediocre in, except for biology. I was pretty good in that. But yeah, I mean, my first job was living with a parent who takes drugs, which was an educational kind of after-school thing.
He's very informative.
And then I got a commercial for Matchbox cars where I played a little gangster and opened a Matchbox set and raced this other kid. And I couldn't believe I got that job. I was excited. From that point on, I was like, if I could do this for a living, if I seriously can get paid for this, and this is a possibility, let's go for it.
Some of my possibilities here, that would be the possibilities. So I'll put an SINE statement there.
Let's just keep being aggressive and do it.
I mean, auditioning at any age is a cruel process.
Horrible. It's the worst.
What's it like as a kid? I mean, how do you handle that rejection?
It's interesting because I remember, you're sort of set up and you're put into this system where I think that
There you go, talking about the system again. And he's complaining about it.
you're supposed to be a jack of all trades, and you're 11, 12 years old, and you're sort of conditioned to say, well, the casting director's there and say, well, can you juggle? And you're like, absolutely I can juggle, can you ski? Hell yeah, I'm your man, I'll do whatever you want, little tap dancing show. So you're supposed to
I'll do whatever you want. To any again.
set yourself up as somebody that can, basically do anything that they want. And I remember sort of having that attitude for a while, and I didn't book a job for like a year at like 12, 13 years old. And I know that's not, it's like a big sob story, but but the truth is, it was that year of like rejection where I finally said to I suppose I took a different attitude towards the audition process, and I started to get jobs after that. And I think it was really because I said to myself, I'm not dependent on this job. This isn't going to define me, and I started to sell myself less, prepare more for the roles, really investigate the characters as much as I could, and not feel like, my self-worth was dependent on whether I booked the job or not. And I think that's finally what clicked with me, and I realized that casting directors weren't always necessarily looking for the Broadway showman that could do whatever they wanted, but somebody that had I don't want to say a little edge to them, but a different attitude about the audition process, because you focus more on the work, you focus more on the character rather than selling yourself constantly to these people, which is and the auditioning process at a young age was kind of cutthroat. I mean, I remember a kid bringing a gun to an audition.
A real
do,
one?
yeah.
He's talking about, I
gun.
remember a guy coming bringing a gun to it. That's our experience. Man, he's systematic. Seems like he's systematic, guys. Looks like he's systematic.
It was a kid that
Did he
brought
get
a
the
gun.
part?
He might have gotten the role. But you'd go in there, and I met one of my best friends ever.
Just
Toby
initiated
McGuire,
there. I
at
met one of my best friends, so he's just initiated there again.
an audition. And there's this whole dynamic with mothers there, and like what kid is doing what. And she said she said to Toby, and I was just doing karate kicks over at him and like having a good time. She's like, "Watch out for that kid. He's trying to psych you out, Toby. Don't get into his mind games." And I was like, I was just having fun. I like I want to hang out with him. But it was this very competitive environment for kids at that time. Yeah, and still is. I'm sure.
You spoke about the next movie is the one that really broke you out, This Boy's Life.
Yeah.
I believe, were you on Growing Pains at the time and they had to allow you out to do it?
Yeah.
Wow.
What a wonderful group of people to give me that opportunity too, because I think that
wonderful group of people. That'd be FEGI.
they kind of they foresaw that it was probably the last season, and I had three or four episodes, and I didn't know, contractually they didn't need to let me out to go do this movie, but thanks to the support of the cast and everyone who was so lovely, they kind of lobbied for me to be able to go do this movie, and so they wrote me out of the season, getting readopted by my father because I was a homeless kid on Growing Pains, and I got to go do This Boy's Life.
That's why you were readopted by your father.
Yeah.
This is all coming together for me now.
He went through the progression of that just then.
You spoke about the next movie is the one that really broke you out, This Boy's Life.
Yeah.
I believe, were you on Growing Pains at the time and they had to allow you out to do it?
Yeah.
Wow.
What a wonderful group of people to give me that opportunity too, because I think that they kind of they foresaw that it was probably the last season, and I had three or four episodes, and I didn't know, contractually they didn't need to let me out to go do this movie, but thanks to the support of the cast and everyone who was so lovely, they kind of lobbied for me to be able to go do this movie.
They did this,
and so
they did
they
that.
wrote me out of the season, getting readopted by my father because I was a homeless kid.
And he's giving extra information. They adopted me.
I got to go do This Boy's
Informative.
Life.
That's why you were readopted by your father.
Yeah.
This is all coming together for me now. This Boy's Life, for those of you who don't know, and shame on you, is
all right, so what it's looking like is that he's systematic. He's an SINE user. His progression is initiating, and he's informative. That's what it's looking like right now. It looks like we're going to be down to two types, isfj and entp, because those are the two systematic types that are starters. Okay.
Adaptation of Tobias Wolff's memoir about growing up with an abusive stepfather. And I've spoken to the director, Michael Caton Jones, who said he saw over...
The reason why we'll be eliminating the introverted types is because he's initiating and he's changing the topic randomly. He just changes it, and he's initiating. He's extroverted, so he's the starter, and he's progression. You also have to watch out for progression. If they're going through progressions a lot, and they're informative, that automatically makes him extroverted. Okay, so you got to watch that. He's not talking about outcomes. He's not talking about the end product at all. He's just going through the sequence of everything. So that's what we're looking at right now. ISFJ is eliminated, ISFP, INTP, INFP, because he's not talking about pure outcomes. He's talking about the progression of things. And he seems to be systematic. We already got 4 points for systematic. So one more point and we'll be eliminating ESFP and ENFP because they're people focused. So their interests, like what do they get out of a situation, what do other people get out of a situation, but he keeps complaining about the system. So we think we're down to ESFJ and ENTP.
For 400 kids for this movie. I mean, do you remember the audition process?
Oh yeah, very well.
And at one point, I believe it was narrowed down to like maybe 5 kids, and you and Toby
Yes.
were both in the final 5.
Yeah.
And why is that funny? Do you remember the audition when you first met De Niro?
That was one of those incredible auditions that came around that I suppose every kid had been waiting for a long period of time, because it's just not that often that you get a starring role above Robert De Niro in this incredible, screenplay, and was, Ellen Barkin and Michael Caton Jones, and it was just, everyone was sort of fiending for this role. And
talking about what everybody else wanted and stuff, so it's NE again. So we're gonna close out SINE. ESFPs are SENI. So that he can't be ESFP. Okay, he can't be. ESFPs are also not systematic.
I got down, I suppose, to the final 5, and there was like a last sort of day. Toby was there, and I do remember thinking to myself,
and he's recanting his memories pretty well, and from a first person perspective, that's more SI.
I got to do something. I got to do something to stand out. And in the audition, there was Art Lentz and Michael Caton Jones. Art Lentz was the producer.
Damn, it's made me
And
good.
De Niro. And I remember there was a mustard jar scene, and he had to jam a mustard jar in my eye repeatedly. It was an abuse scene. And the script sort of didn't call for it, but I got up and he said, now, is it empty? Is it empty? And I got up and I screamed, no! Like completely unnecessary, but I screamed in his face.
So that's pragmatic, because he decided to make a decision going against the other things on his own free accord here. So that'd be a point for pragmatic there.
And I sat there, you know,
see what he said? Didn't call for it. I just did it on my own.
Repeatedly.
Free will.
An abuse scene. And the script sort of didn't call for it, but
the script didn't call for it, but I still did it. That's pragmatic. Because if it had blew up in his face, you're gonna be asking for forgiveness.
And he said, now, is it empty? Is it empty? And I got up and I screamed, no! Like completely unnecessary, but I screamed in his face, and I sat there, you know, with my head, you know, looking like a red tomato, and everyone started laughing at me in the entire room. De Niro, everybody was in hysterics. And I sat there frozen, thinking, "Oh my God, I just screwed this entire."
So he's asking for forgiveness now.
And I just sat there frozen, and then you know, Bob, in traditional De Niro fashion, kind of just looked at me and went, "It's good, it's good, it's good." And then you know, we carried on doing the scene, and I think I actually had dinner with De Niro recently, and he told me, no, I was the one who said you should get the job, which was very sweet. Mm-hmm. So he told me that, which was very cool. And yeah, I mean, as far as memories are concerned, that I'm the most nostalgic about that movie, and I remember every single day on set because everything was so new to me.
I remember every single thing on set, more or less.
From, you know, straight from a sitcom where everything was very relaxed on set. Everyone was constantly joking around, to having, you know, De Niro walk on set.
Mm-hmm. So like you gotta remember, like SE, like they like to remember things from like totems. Like let's say like SE user might forget something, but then they'll see like a picture of something, and then they'll get a flashback of the memory. As an SI users pretty much remember them pretty well, especially when it gives them a first person perspective. I mean, first person experience, like you said. This first big first big role. The difference, the sort of dynamic and presence that he had with the crew was just, I was like, what is going on here? I don't quite fathom what everyone's so serious about. And then I saw him sort of go through his process, the improv, just seen him go through his system. That's what he's talking about. I see him go through his system.
Technical
improv,
work
the technicality
was just something that I witnessed every single day, and really, really blew me away. Because I didn't know how to conduct myself on a set. I was just sort of a wild animal, and it was really Michael Caton Jones that, you know, gave me some of these incredible fundamentals about making a movie. You know, every time I would sort of, you know, get tired of a scene or not want to persist, you go, pain is temporary, film is forever. You go back in there and you give it everything you possibly can, you know. And then, you know, I remember seeing, and Toby actually, we made a vow, Toby and I, we said, whoever gets a role, whoever gets the lead, we got to fight for some, you know, one of us to get a role in this movie. So that was my one request, that Toby got a role in the movie, and he has a small role in the film too. And I remember Michael Caton Jones sitting there, and we're all sort of goofing off and being kids, being 15-year-old kids. And, you know, he went up to Toby, who was goofing off with me right before a dramatic scene, and goes, you know, leave him alone. He's like, why? He's like, an actor prepares. And he sent me off to the corner, goes, you go focus on what the scene means. And I did. You know what I mean? It was those types of basics that were, you know, lifelong lessons that I learned from that movie. I mean, I really learned everything about making movies from that one experience.
Did you ever get over the intimidation of, you know, being in a film with Robert De Niro? Did it fade as you worked together?
Oh no, never. No, it's not. Still not to this day. I mean, he is my favorite actor of all time. He really is. He's that relationship with him and Scorsese just influenced every one of of my friends in the industry that I've met through the years. That is the sort of golden relationship of cinema to me. I mean, it just gets no better than that. That run of films that they did together, it's just, can't even talk about it. It's that mind-blowing.
I believe you've also said, like I said, you weren't training as a kid, but you were reading a lot of books on Meisner technique.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I never went to a formal acting. It was only until really The Aviator that I started working with Larry Moss, who, it was the first film that I had produced, that I had thought of. It was sort of my concept, and I felt like I needed to brush up on my technique. So that's when I really started doing formal training, and it was an amazing experience with him. I mean, it was
amazing experience.
It was more than
SI.
learning how to be a better actor. He was a life coach. It was like, he's like, the first day he was like, all right, you wanna go over this stuff? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, okay, you're Howard Hughes. You're in your plane. This is your cocoon. This is your sanctuary. Show me how you fly a plane. I'm like, well, I haven't really. He's like, come on, don't, basically sit in that chair and do it for me right now. I'm like, well, I haven't quite prepared. He's like, don't you pull that shit with me. He's like, you get in that goddamn cockpit right now and you show me who the hell Howard Hughes is. You do it in front of me right now. I'm like, okay, shit.
He's going through the progression all the time. So, yeah, he's progression. He's initiating. He's systematic. We're down to ESFJ and ENTP.
I mean, and from there we started working on breaking down this script in a way that I'd never had before.
I have to say I'm impressed because most people,
all right, so
don't.
To break down the difference between ESFJ versus ENTP, one is concrete, the other one's abstract. The one is pragmatic, the other one is affiliative. ESFJs are affiliative and concrete, ENTPs are pragmatic and abstract. So they're both FETI users, so that's already dead. That's what we're looking at right now. Is he pragmatic and abstract, or is he concrete and affiliative? Is he affiliative, or is
Get
he
an
pragmatic?
Oscar nomination and have like many hit films behind them, and then
Is Leo talking about being effective? Is he rebellious? Is he a contrarian? Does he like his personal freedom? Or does he like roles assigned? Does he like doing the right thing? That's what we're looking at right now.
choose to go see an acting coach?
I think everyone can always, brush up on their technique. It is, what we do is it takes a lot of research. If you really want to inhabit a role, it takes a lot of work and training, and I think it's incredibly important to constantly, no matter how successful you are, it's incredibly important.
So after This Boy's Life, you went on to play Arnie Grape in What's Eating Gilbert Grape. And this was a turning point. I know. This was a turning point in a lot of ways, because I understand you actually turned down another movie just for the opportunity. I don't even think you had an audition lined up for Gilbert Grape.
I did have an audition lined up for it, yeah. No, it was one of those situations where, I did this movie, This Boy's Life, and it hadn't come out yet, but there was this one role that I wanted to play desperately, but I started to get offers for other movies, and there was a big Disney movie that they wanted
Progression
me to do.
again.
I don't know where I got those little balls at 16 years old to say, no, I'm gonna wait it out because I want to audition for this other film. But if there's one thing that I'm really proud of in my entire career, it's that moment at 16 to say that, and do that and have that sort of conviction of what I wanted to do. That's the one thing I'm really proud of.
Because the other movie was an offer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was for a lot of money at that time, which sounded great at the time, but I said no. Yeah.
Well, did you have a good support team at this point? An agent, a manager?
That shows
father,
he's not interest focused. He said no to that. He could, if he was interest focused, he probably would have went for that cash.
Would always sort of steer me towards interesting projects. For example, playing Arthur Rimbaud was never something that was on my radar, and my dad sort of he's an incredibly well-read person, and he's like, look, I know you're getting offered these other things, but take a look at this guy, Arthur Rimbaud. He was kind of the James Dean of his era. He was a very radical poet, changed poetry at that time. And, I'm not telling you what to do, but just, take a little special attention to that one. And through the course of my career, he's always, gently said to me, hey, you might want to take a look at this. I haven't always listened to him, of course, but, it's been great to have somebody like that.
What was it about the part of Arnie that spoke to you so strongly?
I was a big fan of Lasse Hallström, and My Life as a Dog I remember seeing with my mother in the theaters and being blown away by that film. And I was also a huge fan of Juliette Lewis. I saw Cape Fear, and I was just like, this is one of the greatest actresses I've seen come out in this industry in a long time. And of course, getting to work with Johnny Depp was a big, but it was the role. It was the role. I remember talking to my agents and them saying to me, look, this is a real, if you really, want to do a special kind of character and really go for something a little different, this could be it for you. So, I really, and Lasse gave us these tapes of a kid that he wanted to model Arnie off of. And, I kind of just obsessively watched that for a week and imitated what was on the tapes. Mm-hmm. And then after
imitate would be NE.
I got the role, it was a whole other process of, investigating that role.
Process,
now, I don't think you found out until after you got the part, or maybe even after the movie was done, but Lasse originally didn't want to cast you because he thought you were too good looking.
Oh, yeah, that's what I heard afterwards, yeah. Yeah, I remember getting the role. I actually remember the moment when I got Gilbert Grape. I was so excited because I'd said no to a few things, and I was with, I think Toby and my friend Kevin were doing Hot Rod Brown Class Clown or something like that, a television show, and I was in his trailer, and we were in an Airstream. And I remember jumping up and down and hitting my head, and we were all sort of celebrating and rolling around and wrestling. It was a great moment. It was like winning the lottery, really.
Yeah. Toby didn't go out for Gilbert Grape, too, did he?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But like I said, I have a terrible memory.
And he's done just fine.
You have a terrible
so
memory. You seem to remember everything.
And once you actually landed the role, I understand you continued to sort of study this character by spending time at a home?
Yeah.
For people who had a condition like Arnie's.
I sort of, this was really the first distinct character that I was playing, so I tried to emulate, I suppose, what I saw Bob do on set. And, I said, Lasse, he was kind of involved with structuring the script, and I think he was kind of just expecting me to do what I did in the audition. And I said, well, I'm going to go to, a home in Austin, Texas, and spend some time with some kids who have mental disabilities. And I spent about a week there. And I remember coming to him with this checklist. and it was like 100 different little attributes that I learned from hanging out with these kids. And I said, will you just show me what you want me to do? He's like, no, why don't you just act those out?
So that was TE, and he seems to be using TE somewhat. So we're down to ESFJ and ENTP. ESFJs have TE in the A spot, so that's all. They're practically never going to use it. While ENTPs do have TE in the critic spot. So we're seeing a little bit more TE, but we're gonna have to keep going.
All of them, I said, I think I'm thinking of 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 24, and he's like, okay, you do that. And I remember the first day being incredibly nervous, and we did a lot of takes. With Lasse, and I felt like
This guy said his memory was bad, but look at him recalling all of this shit.
It was a catastrophe, but the more I was on set, and the more I got used to the atmosphere, and sort of got my feet into the role, it just sort of took on a life of its own, and it was a lot. That role was so fun because I wasn't dependent on the screenplay whatsoever. I mean, I had my own set of rules. I could do whatever the hell I wanted.
Woo! We get some pragmatic statements. Finally, Jesus. Oh, we finally get some. Oh, yeah. Finally, we get some pragmatic statements from him. I want some pragmatic or affiliative.
The more I.
But we figured we'd be getting pragmatic statements because he is said TE, and ENTPs do have TE in the 6th spot, and the critic function is actually very strong. It's a lot stronger than people actually realize, and it causes people to mistype a lot of individuals. So yeah, we kind of figured since we're seeing TE from him, he is name dropping people. He was talking about the list that he created. That list or whatever that he did could be going to systematic as well. But we noticed that. So it was leaning more ENTP-ish, but I was hoping to see more abstraction from him.
On set, the more I got used to the atmosphere and sort of got my, got my feet into the role, it just sort of took on a life of its own. And it was a lot, that role was so fun because I wasn't dependent on the screenplay whatsoever. I mean, I had my own set of rules.
I had my own set of rules, pragmatic. Okay, I had my own set of rules so I can figure out how to be effective.
Do whatever the hell I wanted.
I can do whatever the hell I want to. Okay, come on, pragmatic.
I mean, sometimes it was like a dramatic scene for Johnny, and I would just be throwing spaghetti in the air, and they'd
first person perspective.
Lots would say, "Sure, you want to do it?" I'm like, I don't know. This is what I would be doing. He's like, "All right, you go for it." And it was incredibly freeing because I didn't have to.
Pragmatic people like freedom because it gives them the ability to be effective. They really like freedom.
And we paid attention to the script, but it was so.
While I feel that people like roles to be given to them.
Loose, everything was so incredibly loose and so improvisational, and I really just lived in my own world. It was great. It was awesome. It was a great experience.
And for that role, you were named Best Supporting Actor by the National Board of Review, and you received your first Golden Globe nomination and your first Oscar nomination at the age of 19. What was it like going through, that whirlwind? And you probably couldn't have expected that from this small little movie directed by some foreigner.
No, I didn't even know what the hell was going on, to tell you the truth. I just remember when they told me that I was nominated. I was like incredibly excited, shocked, and then my first reaction was I just don't want to go up on stage and accept anything because they told me 1 billion people watched you give award speeches, and I said I don't want to, I told my mom, I don't want to go up there, Mom. She's like, well, you have to go. You have to go do this. But I was incredibly shocked. I remember going to a screening and somebody complimented me afterwards, and I was just completely unaware of anything that was going on. It's nowadays you're infused with all this stuff about awards and this and that and box office and.
You see that he doesn't care about awards. He's not big on that. He's a TI user. TI users really. Awards. T usually like, give me my damn award. I want my award. That's my award. Get out of the way. That's a totally different attitude.
At the time, it was just, I had no idea. I mean, I didn't even read a single review. It was just.
See, like, go look at Dwayne Johnson and how he talked about like his success and all that. He was like, man.
It's like,
Leonardo saying
a random person coming up to me after seeing a screening saying, "Hey, good job," and I'd be like, "Cool." It was a much different time.
So are you aware that Janet Maslin of the New York Times called your turn show-stopping?
No, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't read anything. It was nice to get a reaction from my friends and people that I knew.
Did that film or the Oscar nomination, change your career? Did you find more offers were coming to you?
Certainly, yeah. After that, for sure, yeah. Things accelerated after that for me, for sure.
But again, it seems like you made very interesting choices. You did 2 small films. You mentioned playing Arthur Rimbaud in Total Eclipse, and you also played Jim Carroll in The Basketball Diaries.
Yeah, that's right. Totally forgot about The Basketball Diaries.
Those are really interesting choices, especially, for someone who's 20 at the time, I think.
I think I was even younger. I think I was 18 when I did Basketball Diaries. I think so. Yeah, because I was in New York for the first time with my own apartment.
But your memory's so bad, but you remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a role that I really fought for and really wanted, and it was incredibly low budget. God,
that was a role I fought for and I really wanted it. Fought for pragmatic.
New York, and that was another role that I was really, really passionate about, and it was incredibly exciting. incredibly exciting time.
What 18-year-old is passionate about Jim Carroll?
Well, I read his poetry and
Yeah.
his book, and I remember talking to my parents about New York at that time, and I just thought it was so beautifully written.
I did this, S-I.
This also began a trend of yours of playing real-life people, which you'd continue with movies like J. Edgar and Wolf of Wall Street, obviously. What is it that attracts you to real people?
I suppose when you're reading a screenplay and you're moved by something that happens in it, to know that it happened in reality, you just get a different sort of emotional attachment to it. And oftentimes people's lives are just so much more surreal and interesting and obscure than something that a writer can create from their own imagination. So
imagination. There you go.
I've never really questioned why I'm attracted to material. I just have sort of gone for it, and I've looked into history a lot of times to find interesting characters, because I just feel like they're just so much more original.
Mm-hmm.
They are,
strangely,
and bizarre. People's motivations and choices they puzzle me all the time. You know what I mean? You're doing a scene and you think, okay, he breaks up with his girlfriend, he should have this sort of traditional response. But then if you're like looking at it like a historian and you look back at that time period of their life, they took a completely different direction. You wonder why. And just people are so interesting. Their choices are so interesting.
Their choices,
do you approach
that's any
playing a real person differently at all? I mean,
other people's
do you feel a
choices
certain
is any.
responsibility knowing that this person has
for sure.
family and ancestors?
I just like the investigative process of it. I really do. I think that it's almost like doing a college thesis on somebody. And like I said with The Aviator, I read a book on Howard Hughes in my early 20s, and I tried to develop that for many years. Michael Mann wrote a screenplay, and what I was going to do with Michael Mann, and
Aggression
he had
again.
just done Ollie and said he was
This.
I respected that.
He going from.
Then I brought it
This
to
man
Marty.
going from one progression to another tangent. Jesus Christ, yeah. I think we got him here, but we need more from him.
And thankfully he did it, and it was called The Aviator, and I didn't know if he would respond to it, because we'd just done Gangs in New York, and he basically said to me, look, this screenplay is interesting because it's about the minutia of germs within this incredible tycoon, this guy that is victim to his own sort of psychosis. Mm-hmm. And he goes, I picked it up and I read Aviator on the front title, and I said, well, I don't know anything about aviation. But then I said to myself, well, I didn't know anything about boxing, and I did Raging Bull, so I'm gonna consider this. And thankfully he did it. But yeah, I love for The Aviator, for example, I did this entire road trip, sort of meeting everybody that I knew that ever knew Howard Hughes or had Howard Hughes stories, and I was like an investigative journalist. It was so much fun to dig into history like that and try to encapsulate where he was at certain time periods in his life and the choices that he made.
Well, he may not be real, but I don't think any historical figure comes bigger than Romeo. Mm-hmm. In Romeo and Juliet, which was your next film. What was the appeal of doing Shakespeare, but it's Shakespeare via Baz Luhrmann?
It was really Baz. Baz is such an interesting, dynamic force, and so enthusiastic about creating art and experimenting, that you sit alone with him for an hour and you just want to do anything that he says. It's amazing. I mean, he's incredible. He's so inspiring. He really is, and he's a director that takes a lot of chances, and a lot of the stuff is incredibly broad. But when it comes down to the,
all right, I'm gonna get another interview here because, man, I'm sick of him talking about his life. Like, I'm sick of that. Let's get something else. Let's see what he says on Ellen.
First off, I gotta say, I saw some of you guys dancing there, and you guys
Initiating.
were absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Initiating FE, making them feel good.
Even if you haven't seen the movie, if you've seen the trailer, they show a little bit of him dancing. You're a great dancer. You actually, that little scene where you're dancing, you're a good dancer.
I used to be a pop locker when I was in elementary school.
Were you?
Yeah. It's actually one of the reasons why I didn't get an agent, because I auditioned and I had like a punk rock haircut and I dressed like a little, street dancer, and they rejected me. Oh.
Yeah. I disagree with that, because I met you, I think you were like 16 years old, and you had just done This Boy's Life, which was your first film, really.
It was on Hollywood Boulevard, right?
Yes, we were at an after party at like the Chinese theater or something. And I'm telling you, you were so... You told me, I just was listening to you talk, and I thought, you are so special and charming, and then you told me you just finished that film, and I had never seen you in anything, but I just knew you were going to be somebody because you were so charming. Then you did What's Eating Gilbert Grape, and he was amazing in that, and I feel like I discovered you.
You feel like you discovered me?
I claim stake on you. I think I'm responsible for your career.
Well, I've always been a big fan of yours.
Well,
ever since I first met you. So thank you very much.
But really, and this performance in this movie is, I really want to say it's your best performance I've ever seen, and you've done some great movies. But in this movie, your performance is outstanding, and you're nominated for a Golden Globe, well deserved. You were there. I hosted the Oscars in 2007, and you were there in the front row. You were nominated for Blood Diamond. I'm hosting again this year, and I pray I'm looking out there and seeing you in the audience for this, because you deserve to be there.
You're very sweet.
Ellen, shut up.
Yeah. Even if you don't get nominated as a seat filler, I just want to see you there.
I love those seat fillers.
Yeah, just be there.
Literally, as soon as you leave the bathroom, somebody just scoots in and goes, "Excuse me,"
they're
and
just
they
right there,
sit right down. Yeah.
All dressed up. All right, so tell everybody, this movie, you produced it as well, right?
Yes.
So it took a long time to make it.
I was fascinated by this book. I mean, Jordan Belfort looks at this as a cautionary tale. He's sort of reflecting on his wild, debaucherous, hedonistic days on Wall Street, where he was, consumed by greed and excess. But he was so candid and honest about it, and I really wanted to put this up on screen because in a lot of ways it felt like a reflection of the time that we were living in. I mean, really anything goes in this film. It is absolutely wild, and Martin Scorsese and I decided to really pull no punches and really go for it.
Yeah, it's but I can't believe that everything you see, and when you see this film, it's, first of all, it's so good, and you and Jonah Hill are great together, but the scene when you take Quaaludes and I'm from New Orleans. We said Quaaludes. But I'm not kidding. I know what they're called. I'm from New Orleans.
That's a T.I. statement from
Quaaludes. So when you take the Quaaludes and you have to make your way down the steps to the car, it is genius how you do that. Like, and how many takes did you have to do?
God, we worked on that whole sequence for a week. One of my favorite sequences in Goodfellas is where Ray Liotta's like spinning mixing the marinara. He's doing drugs. He's got the helicopters circling around him. His nanny wants to take her hat, and the cops are coming after him. We wanted to do kind of a film within a film. So we really worked really hard on this Quaalude sequence where essentially Donnie has a botched money deal, who's played by Jonah Hill. And to apologize for that, he gives me these incredibly powerful Quaaludes. I simultaneously find out that my house is being bugged by the FBI, and I got to get back home to him because he's on the phone with Switzerland, and it turns into this sort of insane sequence. And it was probably the most wild thing I've ever done in my entire life. Jonah Hill and I looked at each other and said, how are we allowed to do this? How are we allowed to get paid to do this for a living? It was just insane. It was,
and just to take that much time to try to crawl downstairs and to try to open a car door that opens up and for your foot to get caught on that door that just was hilarious.
I appreciate that. I mean, it all resulted in this insane sequence at the end where Jonah decides to stuff ham into his mouth as well, and he crashes into a plate glass table, and we're doing this CPR sequence.
Progression.
And, the big challenge that day, we had to do 70 takes because they couldn't get this ham to stick on my face. and they had to put KY jelly, and there was literally a guy there behind this giant wig with a plastic spoon just flicking ham on my face all day long as I'm doing this insane sequence. But it was almost one of the most surreal things I've ever done in my entire career.
All right, I'm done. We were down to isfj and entp, and we got 3 points for pragmatic. He doesn't seem like he's talking about doing the right thing at all. So based off that, Leonardo DiCaprio is coming off pragmatic. I didn't really catch much abstraction or anything, but with him being pragmatic and they were talking about his life, I didn't really give him opportunities to really talk about it, but he seems to be open to possibilities. So I got him down as an ENTP. He's progression heavy. Everything he says is a progression. How it moves from one event to the next. He's not talking about the end product at all. This is insane. He's systematic, and we noticed that he complained about system as well. And that's another thing that ENTPs do a lot. They complain about a system, boy. That's one thing they will do. They will complain about a system. So we noticed he was progression. He was systematic. He's SINE. Memory is very good, even though he said it was really bad. If you see, he was recanting everything almost perfectly. The girl had the notes in front of her, and he was like, "Nah, I think I was 18." That was TI correction. But also, he's a TIFE user as well. TFI, pragmatic. We noticed very quickly he's informative. Several times we're just like, yo, what are you saying, man? Get to the point. And he's pragmatic. We got 3 points for pragmatic in there, and not any points for affiliative. Not talking about doing the right thing. So, and ENTPs are also abstract. We got Leonardo DiCaprio as an ENTP. He can't be ESFP, which is what personality database has, because ESFPs are not systematic. They're interest based, and they talk about what people getting out of situation and that pragmatic interest. When you put those two together, it's like, what am I getting right now? Right now, right here. And that's because they have NI in the inferior spot and NE in the A spot. So they're really not worried about the future at all. That's actually inferior, like what they're inferior about. ESFP is a no way for Leonardo DiCaprio. Absolutely no way. And he's not a TE user, he's a TI user. But yeah, I can see why people would make that mistake, because he does have TE critic being an ENTP, so he will use TE from time to time, especially if he's a well-developed ENTP, which it seems like he is. He's not very sporadic like Kanye West or anything like that. But yeah, so we got Leonardo DiCaprio as a ENTP, and I see why you said he was pretty tough, man, because he took me probably the longest video I've had in a while. But yeah, this is Mongolian Mindset, and we're out. And thank you, Victor. Hope I said your name right, brother.